Excuse me a minute. I gotta get.
Oh, you're fine.
Oh, what do I got here? I put my dogs out on the porch. They're not gonna-
Oh. I know I closed my door so my cat doesn't come across the screen. Wouldn't be the first time.
Oh. Okay. Okay, we're back. We have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
I think the people who are attending today got a couple of different reminders with the time, so
Okay.
I think they should be okay.
Okay.
I think when I've been transitioning from being the chair of the webinar committee for the past zillion years, I finally recruited somebody to replace me.
Okay.
And he said our fiscal year starts October 1st.
Same.
And he set up the calendar with all of the outside webinars being at noon and all of the internal webinars being at 7 in the evening without checking to see what might interfere with those.
Ah.
And so that's what happened. And all of a sudden, our administrative assistant realized nobody was going to be available.
Right.
Although today would have been fine at noon because our meeting was over by 11:30.
Yeah.
But next week is our chapter meeting and it will probably run through lunch. So
Yeah, I'm fine with 4. 4 is fine for me. I never really have anything else scheduled that late unless I have an event. But even if I have an event, it typically starts at 5:30. So
yeah, well,
as
I
long as I'm
figured
not on the
for,
road somewhere, then I'm
yeah,
fine.
for a lot of people, it's at the end of their work day. So
Yep,
it works out okay.
definitely.
I like it much better than 7 o'clock in the evening because
Oh yeah, that's late.
I get up at 5:30. So by 7 o'clock in the evening, I'm pretty flagged out.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, it's like my body knows when it's 8:30. I'm like, yep.
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready to go up.
Okay. I guess I should probably get to the top of the. Oh, we're not moving. Let's start at the top here. See if we're, yeah, okay. I think I'm just going to go ahead and open it up,
Okay.
get us started. I had someone from Lorain County call me today and say they had a new employee and they wanted to make sure that they got to the webinar today.
Oh, nice.
So I sent them the registration link. I think both of these are such good webinars for clients because especially with the workbook.
Yeah, I agree.
They're really great.
Yeah, for sure.
And we did send the workbook out ahead of time, but because perhaps some people registered today, we'll send it out again with the follow-up stuff.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, okay, we probably wait for a few minutes after 4. Is this a busy time of year for you?
Not really. We're kind of winding down here, and our fiscal is the same as you, so
Mm,
we have a lot of galas coming up though too, with a lot of things that we do in the community, so that's kind of fun.
mhm. We've been doing a lot of work with the community development centers around Cleveland. And I think that that's a really good place for organizations like ours that do so much free stuff, because
Right.
so many of the clients there really don't have any financial resources.
Yeah.
So over the past couple of years, we've been trying to establish relationships with most of them. I think so far we've only gotten to about 5 or 6, but
Good start.
Yeah, it's on our agenda. So it's just 4 o'clock now, so we'll wait a few more minutes. For those of you who are just logging on, welcome. And we'll be waiting a couple more minutes to allow more people to join, and then we will get started.
New Jersey.
Yep.
That's great.
We do have people from California and Florida, New York, which is, one nice thing when you're doing webinars online, people from all over can join.
Amazing.
If they happen to go to our website, all they have to do is click on the registration. Okay, so I think we'll get started with the score slides, and by the time I'm finished, probably everybody will be on. So again, welcome to those of you who are joining us this afternoon. We're delighted to be providing a really great webinar for you. But first, I want to do a little commercial for SCORE. As probably SCORE is one of the largest networks of volunteers for small businesses, small business mentors. So we're able to provide help at any stage of your business. So we're happy to help you. And if you have an opportunity to go to our website, you can sign on for a mentor. Our mission is to foster vibrant small business communities through mentoring and education. We hope that you, as a small business owner, have the opportunity to gain the resources and the help that you need to be successful. As mentioned, all of the SCORE mentors are volunteers. They give up their time and effort because they've had success and they want to help others be successful. These are some statistics for our last year. We helped start 500 new businesses and helped create a number of jobs. If you notice, we cover all of the counties along Lake Erie, from Ashtabula in the east to Huron and Erie County in the west. Our services are absolutely free. We get funding from the Small Business Administration, but we also get funding from a number of local businesses that want to help us help you. So we are able then to provide these services free. This is a snapshot of our website. You can go here, get a mentor. You can see all the workshops, both the local live workshops and recorded. And we have something in the neighborhood of 70 or 80 recorded webinars that you can view at your leisure. So go to the website and take a look and take advantage of all the resources that are there. And now I am going to stop sharing for a minute and get started with the presentation. And I'm very happy to recognize Laura Gibbons, who's Vice President at Chase Bank and Senior Business Consultant focusing on minority entrepreneurs. And Laura, we're, I think, ready to go.
All right, wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for joining. As mentioned, my name is Laura Gibbons. I do run a mentorship program here at Chase, also a free program. That's why we love partnering with SCORE so much. I think that there's a lot of different things that you can learn, from SCORE and from a banking institution, as far as, when it comes to your lending piece of things and how you keep your books and all those kinds of things. So, I've been doing this for a couple of years now. I cover the Cleveland and Akron markets, and sometimes you can find me in Youngstown. So I kind of go all over the place depending on where the need is. So most of my days I spend mentoring business clients, but I do also do events like this where we can, get this information out to the community. This one in particular is one of my favorites. It's the Power of Capital. I was a lender for a long time, so I have a lot of knowledge when it comes to the credit piece of things. And so I love to kind of, high level this kind of topic when it comes to credit. So we can get started. If you want to do full screen on that, you can go to the file in the left-hand corner, and I think it'll say full screen, or actually to the far right, you see the 3 dots right next to the print. Yeah, I think there's like a present mode. There you go. Perfect. Okay. And you could advance it a little bit, I think, to the first one right there. Perfect. Okay. So we don't need anybody to answer this directly. We don't have the lines open. However, throughout the course of this presentation, if you do have any questions and you don't want to forget, feel free to put it in the chat and we will address everything at the end. I do it that way because sometimes I get to your question through the presentation. So we'll do it that way. So that we can kind of get to everything at the end. But I want you to think through this question. How confident do you feel about your knowledge of business credit options? So if you find yourself to maybe be at a 1 where you're not really confident at all, hopefully after today you will know a little. And if you know a little, hopefully you're ready to take a little bit of a deeper dive, or you start to get a solid base of knowledge. So really that's the goal of today, is just to really kind of move you a little bit further, hopefully take a couple of things away that will help you when it comes to accessing capital. All right, go ahead to the next slide. So some of the things that we're going to kind of cover today are think strategically about cash flow. So it's obviously very important to the survival of your business. Does your business actually need to borrow? So there's some questions inside your workbook. That's another thing too. I know she mentioned it in the beginning. If you got emailed a workbook, you will get it again if you don't have it handy. You don't have to have it up to follow along. But a lot of the things that I talk about today, we will reference it. So there'll be some activities that you can do after the call today. So there's going to be some questions inside there about things that you need to kind of consider before you think about taking a loan. Sometimes we all think that the loan is the perfect answer, but there's a lot of things we have to consider before we just kind of take on additional capital. Okay. Looking at the bigger picture. So there's an activity that can help you understand, once again, whether it makes sense to borrow. And then really another one that's really important is what financial data is important, right? You come to the bank and you're like, I'm not really sure what you're going to ask for, what you're going to need. We'll kind of talk high level about some of those things as well. And then what are your credit options? So the different ways that you can borrow for your business. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So let's start talking about cash flow. Next slide, please. When you have money you can spend right now, you have the flexibility to take advantage of opportunities and challenges as they emerge. You can go to the next slide. So if you think about it, one more, cash is really, it helps you conduct daily business, right? It enables you to make quick decisions as a business owner. It's how to invest time and resources in the business. You can go one slide up. And you might use your cash to, say, pay your suppliers, pay your employees, rent space, or even reinvest into the company. You can go to the next slide. So I want to read something to you here. So here's an example of how a successful business can run into cash flow problems. So Tiffany's business has found a niche and she's busy serving clients. She hires help, ramps up her business, buying a lot of equipment, ordering lunches and dinner for her team, and working late hours. She gets a call from her bank. Her accounts are overdrawn. She looks at her invoices and sees many have not come in yet, and a lot of others aren't even due yet. It's going to be weeks before she has the cash on hand that she needs. You can go to the next slide. So what are some takeaways from this? Number one, most important, is that cash flow needs to be managed, right? Just because you see money in the bank doesn't mean that you can go ahead and just, purchase those dinners, right, for your staff. I'm sure it's probably marked for something that's coming in. So understanding how money is actually flowing in and flowing out needs to be managed, if not every day, at least weekly, without a doubt monthly. Okay. But really, you need to be kind of looking at it at least weekly. You have to have an efficient process for payables and receivables, right? They can help you better manage your timing of revenue expenses. So, for example, bill pay has become a really popular thing for online, right? Because if you used to do checks, right? If I wrote a check today, I definitely have to kind of say, hey, that money's gone, right? It's out of my account. Right? I have to subtract it out. It's gone. However, it may not be due for 8 to 10 days. If I used online bill pay and it goes automatic, I might be able to set that up the day before and have that go out. So now I've basically kept that cash in my account for potentially another 7 or 8 days. Now I may get paid on other jobs or invoices coming in that will supply additional revenue or cash into your account, but at least you're still able to operate with that money until that happens, right? You kind of cut yourself a little bit short with that 7 or 8 day window on the cash flow cycle. And just like from the receivable standpoint, right? You got to have a process for how you collect or send out invoices. Now, if you're a point of sale business, sure, you're going to get potentially paid right on the spot. If you're somebody who does a trade or, bills for the business that you have, you have to be able to have a process where you're going to get those invoices out quickly, because unfortunately you can't pay your bills with invoices, right? So if you do the work today, you got to have a process to potentially get that out tomorrow. And then you also have to have a follow-up process, because just because you send the bill doesn't mean everybody's going to pay, right? So that's a real important step to having that efficient process for both the incoming and the outgoing finances. And then borrowing capital strategically can help you ensure, you have cash when you need it. Okay. But those other two things are some things that you should really focus on first. Okay. Next slide. So let's consider a few perspectives on whether your business actually needs to borrow. Next slide, most important thing of this whole entire session, if you take anything away, is that remember that when you borrow capital, you need a plan to pay it back. All right. And when I say that, there has been so many times where someone would come in and say, hey, I need $50,000. And I would say, well, what do you need it for? Right. If you have not done the work to figure out what I need that money for, hey, it's going to take me $10,000 in inventory. It's going to take me this and that to get some equipment. I'm going to need to pay my employees for the next 3 months. Understanding exactly where that money is going and what that's actually going to bring in. That's that you've actually sat and done the math of, am I going to be able to have enough money coming in to actually pay this back? Right. And if it's just kind of a number that you're pulling out of the sky, it will come off that way, and it will only put you potentially in a worse situation when it comes to debt. Okay. So let's go to the next slide. So here are a few things that you want to consider as you think about whether or not to borrow money for your business. And I always say, when you go into a bank, a lot of times people say, oh, you're so intrusive. Why are you asking all these questions? We're asking because there's a few reasons why, because what a startup business is going to require to provide me compared to a business that's been 2, 3, 4, 5 years is completely different. Right. So we're asking these questions also to make sure that we're going to potentially put you in the right product of what you're looking for, because I don't want you to use a line of credit to purchase a vehicle or something like that. Okay. So some of the questions are, how long have you been in business? Right. This is kind of to what I said as far as, are you a startup or you're a couple of years in business? Because what I'm going to ask you might be a little bit different. Is your business profitable? Right? A business that's making money is actually the best candidate for credit. Just to my example before, because it makes the lender, or from the lender's point of view, is that you're going to be a good candidate to pay that loan back. Right? Negative cash flow is a signal that a business could have trouble repaying that loan. So is your business seasonal? This is always a big one. If you're a landscaper that doesn't plow in the wintertime, right? I need to know that, because the bulk of your money is going to come in through a 7 or 8 month period. And it's okay that you're going to have that downtime for those, 3 or 4 additional months. But we need to understand that, because maybe a line of credit's the answer to get you through that winter. Okay. Do you need to build credit? Maybe it's a credit issue where you've had some things in the past, or you don't have enough established business credit, and now you're in that growth mode of trying to build that up. And a business credit card is always a great way to start that, but we'll kind of talk about that as we get going down the presentation. Are you looking to expand? Right? If by adding employees or new locations to your already profitable business can increase the revenue and profitability, you may want to use credit to begin your expansion. And then is it potentially that you need some new equipment, right? If it's essential equipment that's limiting your growth, it might make sense to borrow to increase your revenue potential. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. I always throw this one in there. The term credit, it can mean a lot of different things, but for this presentation,
slide seems to be stuck.
That's okay.
Doesn't want to.
It'll catch up. It'll catch up. There we go.
There we go.
All right. So for our definition of credit, it's going to mean the difference for different things. This is going to mean credit worthiness or credit history. Okay. Just for the sake of our presentation. Okay. You can go to the next slide. Okay. So the first thing that you're going to see when you get your book is there's going to be this activity called look at the bigger picture. And this is really going to give you kind of some questions to think about as you kind of start thinking about credit and does it make sense to borrow. So they break it down into the environment, the operations, and the opportunity. Okay. So just to kind of say a couple out loud, if you don't have your book in front of you. So when it talks about the environment, it says, how has the last year changed the way you think about your business? Who are your competitors and what have they done to adapt in the past year? Right. I talked to a lot of my mentees about learning from their competition, right? There's a lot of things we can learn from our competition as far as pricing, how they market, right? Who they're looking for as customers. A lot of things that we need to kind of to be able to adjust our business, because think about it from a pricing perspective. If we are, I give you a perfect example. I'm actually in the market to hire someone to plow my driveway this winter, and I have gotten quotes from $275 to $550. Right. And being who I am, I naturally had to tell the gentleman, that was trying to charge me 550, that I've had multiple quotes and that he's a little bit off. Now, the thing that I said to him is that, if you offer some type of an additional value, maybe it's that he has a lot of clients, so he's raising his prices because he doesn't really want to take on a lot of additional clients. Maybe he, offers, I know he offered some de-icing solution, do I think it's worth the extra, $150 to $200? No. But understanding where they're coming up with that value, like I said, looking at some of his competition might help him to kind of understand that he's pricing himself out of getting some of these jobs. Okay. Now, when you go to your operations, some of it's what steps have you taken to prepare for a setback, right? Do you have a plan or you plan on winging it? I always say that if we didn't learn anything from COVID, then we're crazy, because if I would have told you, 3 years ago that you need to prepare your business for if the whole entire world shut down, you would have thought I was crazy, right? But now that we've had that insight, not to say that we need to plan for something so drastic, because knock on wood, I hope it never happens again, but people had to pivot really quickly, right? So understanding just some things that you might do if something happened, I think is a really good strategy to kind of have. Okay. And then when it talks about the opportunity, it's who are your customers? How have their lives changed in the past year, right? Are they purchasing different? Are they trying to shop more online? What are some of the changes that your customers are showing you that you may have to adapt to? Okay. So just kind of some things to think about as you continue to kind of grow forward. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. So why are you a good investment? Okay. Focus on what you bring to the table as a leader of your business. Okay. You can go one more slide. Your business, you are your business's most important asset, right? Remember that. This is your chance to show that you're someone to bet on, right? And to be quite honest, it doesn't matter how great your idea is. If a lender isn't confident that you're going to do what it takes to pay off your loan, they're not going to invest in you, right? And that takes me back to what I said earlier about being prepared for why you need the money. Okay. So there is a cash flow tool, which we talk about in our navigating cash flow class, which I think we're doing next Wednesday on the 18th. So I encourage you to join that. I supply this cash flow calculator that really, a lot of times people use it for their business plan. If you've ever put a business plan together and you get to that section where you have to do projections, okay, this tool is perfect for that, where you can literally put in, hey, here's what money's going to come in this month. Here's what has to go out, frequency of how often those things have to happen. And you run this wonderful report, and it does it over 12 months, pie charts, graphs, everything. It can transfer right into your business plan. But this is giving you some real data over a 12-month period. Once you've figured out, if I sell so many units of something minus my expenses, here's what I'm going to be able to walk away with. And to be able to play around with those numbers will help you to understand what it's going to take. What do I have to sell each week, each month, to get to where I need to be, right? And that's really having that understanding of how your money's kind of coming in and out of the company. Okay, next slide, please. So I want you to think of these questions that you need to be prepared to answer the first time that you walk into a bank to ask credit options. Okay. Number one is leadership. So what's your business or management history, right? That used to be a big one, because if you were a startup business, and let's say that you were a doctor and you wanted to open a restaurant, okay, I need to understand what experience you have in cooking. Or are you hiring a chef? Because your resume, your past, does not dictate that you would potentially open a restaurant, right? So it's just understanding how that management history is being established. How did you decide to start this particular business? Do your business partners or members of your management team have experience managing and growing capital? What kinds of professional experts do you rely on to support your business? Meaning, do you have a CPA? Do you have an attorney, right? These are people that are going to help you get there. I know it's not that easy when you're first starting out, but you will know when you get to a time that you need some help from an expert to be able to get your books in order, okay? Second one's cash flow. Do you have enough revenue coming in regularly to make payments on the loan? That's going to be something that I say a few times throughout this presentation, but it's a very valid statement. You have to think about it like if you lend someone $100 you know, are you going to ask them, hey, like, what, when do you think you might pay me back? Or do you let it go for 6 months? Those types of things, right? So we just want to understand when it's that you're going to have enough to have that loan repaid. How do your customers pay you? And what are your payment terms? How do you process your payments, right? We ask these questions because, like I gave the example of writing the check versus doing bill pay. Um, you know, we want to understand what your cash flow cycle looks like. Do you take credit cards? If you take credit cards, you're going to have cash in your account potentially same day or next day, right? That increases your cash flow tremendously compared to someone who maybe just sends invoices and waits for checks to come in the mail. The third one is collateral. So what can you put up for collateral, right? If you're going to purchase something, a hard asset like a vehicle or, a piece of real estate, sure, that's fantastic. We hold that as collateral on any type of loan. If we are doing some type of a line of credit, typically it's inventory or receivables or equipment that we can potentially see. Do we have some value in that? Can we potentially use that as collateral on any type of loan? Okay. Okay, next slide. So this is always kind of the next piece that comes up, right? After we figure out, okay, how was the leadership and how was the cash flow? How's the collateral? Okay, we've got that all established. Now we broach the topic of personal credit score versus business credit score. So a lot of times people don't think that their personal credit score matters when it comes to a business loan, and that couldn't be farther from the truth, right? I always say if your business could write its own checks, it wouldn't matter. But unfortunately, you got to have somebody behind the screen pulling the strings, writing the checks, managing the actual day-to-day activities, right? So that's why anybody over 20% ownership of a company typically is going to have to be looked at to see, hey, how is their credit, right? How do they pay their bills, right? That's going to kind of be a direct reflection of how things are treated on the business side. So personal credit score, we all kind of know it somewhere between 300 and 850. If you're over a 650 in the 700s, it's great. Anything higher than that, fantastic. Business credit score, it's always been this weird thing that, we're not always 100% sure of, right? However, it's 0 to 100. I'm going to say this as a statement that I think is more important. Business credit is about the relationships that you have with vendors, credit cards, loans, whatever, that builds a profile for you within your business report that shows, hey, you have a great relationship, right? If you're a contractor that has a vendor line of credit with Home Depot and Lowe's, and you buy your materials every single month and you pay them back every single month, that is going to be a great reflection on your business credit score, on your business credit report, that you have these great relationships. So like I said earlier, business credit cards always that first line of defense that kind of helps you to start building that score. Vendor relationships, then as you start getting into loans and things like that, that will start to build that business credit profile. Okay. All right. And the other thing that I'll add on that too, that's fine. You could stay on that side. Is as much as possible, keep your business and personal separate. Okay. I know that when you first start, sometimes you commingle, you have to separate it. Okay. From your accountant will thank you. Your bookkeeper will thank you. You have to understand that your business and personal is separate. So there's conversations we can have offline around how you pay yourself or, how you keep that separate, but it is imperative that you do not commingle those things. Okay. And that's just going to help you build your credit history really on both sides. Okay, financial data. All right, so now we've got all that kind of figured out. We've talked that the credit, is going to get where it's got to be from a personal and business perspective. Now we need to understand, okay, what data are we going to look for? Okay, you can go to the next slide. First one, remember, there's that slide again. Loan officers want to feel confident extending credit to your business will pay off. Okay, next slide. The first thing that we're going to look at is tax returns. All right. Now, sure, there are some programs out there where maybe if you ask for a small amount and you bank with that bank, we can see the activity in your account. Could we potentially put it in with no documentation? Potentially. But they're always going to potentially ask for it as well if something comes up like a high risk industry or, something isn't making sense or it's your account's not showing all the great activity that you do because maybe you have another bank and you keep some of it over there, right? So think of it as typically a minimum of 1 year, both business and personal, but typically we're going to ask for 2 years of business tax returns and 1 year of personal tax returns. Okay. And remember that your business wants to show it's paying taxes. Okay. That's always a big one. We understand first couple of years, you're going to put money back into the business, and showing profitability might not be what's going to happen initially. However, the goal is to get to the point where you are showing that you're making a profit. Otherwise, what are you doing it for? Right. And another thing is, if you're not showing that you're making a profit, then it doesn't look like you have any money to actually pay back any loans. Right. So that's going to be an issue down the road, if that doesn't start to be kind of where you head towards. Okay. All right. So tax returns first. You can go to the next one. Second one, balance sheets. Okay. I talked to everyone about how important it is to use accounting software. Okay. This is why balance sheets and income statements are readily available when you use accounting software. I don't necessarily believe that you have to use QuickBooks. Okay. Everybody goes to QuickBooks because it's what everybody knows. I think Wave, it's WAVE, it's a free accounting software that anybody can use. It offers you three things. It allows you to log in, it allows you to link your business account or credit cards to the software, and it allows you to pull reporting like the balance sheets and income statements. This is going to allow you to have all of your information from that business account flow into that software. And then all you have to do is go in there occasionally and edit some things, right? But it's going to allow you to get this balance sheet. So balance sheet is a statement of the assets, liabilities, and capital of your business. Okay. Think of it as assets on the left-hand side. So this is everything that you own that is of value, right? So if it's equipment that you have in your business, or a property, or cash, right? That's an asset. On the right side is your liability. So these are the things that you owe, right? So if you have a loan or a credit card, or, that building that's on the left-hand side has a mortgage, right? So that's a debt on the right side. The bottom section is the difference between those, right? So meaning if you have a ton of assets and not a lot of debt, it's going to show that you're in a positive situation, right? That you have enough assets to liquidate where you could turn around, get that money and pay that debt off and still walk away with money. If it's reversed, where you've got some assets, but you're sitting on a ton of debt, think about that. You're in a position then where you couldn't even liquidate all your assets and pay off your debt. And that's a scary position to be in. We look at the balance sheet to see that, right? Can you afford to take on more debt? Do you have enough assets to potentially cover your liabilities? And you look at the balance sheet for really the same exact reasons. Can I afford to take on more debt, right? Do I have enough assets to potentially liquidate, pay my debts, and walk away from this scot-free? Okay. So main reason why we look at the balance sheet. Next one is the profit and loss statement, also known as an income statement, P&L. It's got three different terminologies. So sometimes people get confused when you're like, hey, can I get the income statement? You're like, well, I have a profit and loss. Same thing. Don't know why we confuse it. However, you'll also need to provide this because this, for the bank's reason, shows us so much about where your business stands, right? This is all where your sales are. So where are you at? If I asked you today to pull a profit and loss, it's going to show me how much revenue that you've actually brought in, right? And how much costs and expenses are also going to be coming out of that potential revenue coming in. Okay. Now, there's so many reasons why you'd want to look at this profit and loss statement frequently for a business owner. Number one, because let's say you looked at your profit and loss through October of last year. Okay. And it told you that you were at $75,000, let's say, in revenue. But this year, you're pulling your report and you're at 60,000 in revenue. Well, that would tell you that you're about $15,000 behind pace from where you were this time last year. This gives you now 3 months to fix that, right? Run a marketing campaign, figure out another way to bring in some additional revenue. If you're not looking at these numbers consistently, then how do you even know where you're at? Or how do you even know if you've got some time to potentially fix anything? Okay. Those are your three most important statements that we're going to ask for. We may ask for a profit or a personal financial statement, but that just depends on the size of loan that you're getting. So as far as I'm concerned, tax returns, profit and loss, and your balance sheet are going to be your most important. Okay. Your P&L statement and your balance sheet are critically important to your ability to get a loan. The more organized, clear, and accurate the information you provide, the better your chances of getting a loan. Okay, work with a trained professional to prepare these documents if you're not the one doing your accounting software currently. Okay. All right, next slide, please. I'm gonna grab a drink here. Okay. All right. So what are your credit options? Okay. So we've reviewed some of basic information you'll need when you apply for credit. So now let's see what your actual credit options are. Okay. A lot of times people are overwhelmed because they think there's all these different types of credit out there. And to be quite honest, there's three. Okay. Now there's the final one we'll talk about has some more arms of complex ones that you can get, but for the most part, it's three. Okay. So you want to think of these kind of as levels or stages, and the successful history at each level improves your chances to qualify for additional forms of credit. All right. So let's go to the first one. And I'm going to try to keep this brief because I am a huge proponent of business credit cards, and I could literally have an entire class around why I think business credit cards are so critical to business. Like I mentioned before, it is the first thing that you do to build credit. Okay. It's the ease and access of the use of them. Every purchase with a business credit card is like a short-term loan. Think about it. It is the only form of capital that you can use today. And as long as you pay it off within that 45 to 60 day when that bill cuts and that statement is due, it is not costing you a penny to borrow that money for that period of time. Now you have to pay it off in full in order to not incur interest. But think about that 45, potentially 60-day window that you have that you could potentially be using a card, waiting for those invoices to come in to get that money, then turning around and paying that card and using that card again for that next cash flow cycle instead of putting your own cash out there, right? We have fraud like you wouldn't believe. You put it on a business credit card, you got a fraud situation, you call us, that money's back in your account within like 5 minutes. If it's out of your personal checking account, we have to do a dispute. It could take up to 90 days to get that cash back. Could you potentially survive if you took a $2,000 or $3,000 hit from a fraudulent purchase? Okay. There's a way to function with credit cards that makes sense. I know not everybody can pay it off every single month. Sometimes we have to carry those balances, but you have to do it in a way that makes sense, right? If I have to put a $2,000 charge on there, then hey, I got to pay this off in 4 months. I'm going to have to pay, $500 and some dollars every single month for the next 4 months to get this paid off and not use it, right? Some type of management around it. Okay. I'm going to say one more thing before we go on. I want to give you an example that I always bring up. Imagine if you had a credit card that you put $5,000 on and you got paid for a job, $10,000. The last thing that anybody wants to do is take $5,000 from that 10 and pay that card off. Okay. Because you say, well, what if an emergency happens? I just want to hang on to that cash. Okay. You have to change your mindset, right? Think about it this way. If you took 5 of that 10 and put it on that card and paid it off, okay. Remember, if you have a 20% rate on that credit card with 5,000 sitting on it, you're going to pay $100 a month in interest when you have that money in the bank, right? So think of it this way. If you paid that card off, now you can use the card again. And remember, you've got that 45 or 60-day free float money. So if that emergency happens, and let's say that emergency only cost you $2,000, it's going to be free for the first 45 to 60 days. And if you pay that off, it's not costing you a penny. If you have to float it another month at 20%, it's only going to cost you $40 in interest instead of that 100 that you're constantly paying every single month on top of whatever payment you're throwing up, right? So business credit cards can be great for your cash flow cycle as long as you use them appropriately. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox. Next slide is business line of credit. So now you have a credit card, you're functioning with that. It's been amazing. It's part of your cash flow cycle. It helps you to get your inventory. Then people say, well, why a business line of credit then? How is it different? How is it the same? The difference between a business line of credit compared to a credit card is that the second that you borrow from a business line of credit, your interest starts to accrue. Okay. Now it's not going to be 20%. It's probably going to be more in today's world. It's probably more around 8 or 10%. Okay. So think of my example I gave you before where you put $2,000 on that credit card. Let's say you only have 1,000 in cash that you could potentially pay off that card with. Okay. So pull another $1,000 from your line of credit, which means take it from there, put it in your checking. Because remember, business line of credit is access to cash. Okay. It's not like a credit card, it's actual cash. You could take that extra 1,000, pay that card off. Okay. Because now you've got 1,000 sitting at 8% instead of a card, it's sitting at 20% on that other card. Right. So sometimes you just have to think about some cheaper ways to use some of the credit that you have available to you. Okay. A lot of times people use business lines of credit for two things: taxes and payroll, right? Because so many other things in our life we can use card for. So if there's a need to access actual cash, business line of credit is a great solution for that. Payroll, taxes, bulk inventory where you're going to get a discount, certain things like that where you could take advantage of it. Okay. All right. So the last one is the business term loan. Okay. So think of a business term loan as the bigger purchases, right? Anything over 6 months or anything that you can't pay off in 6 months, right? So you think a big piece of equipment, a home, obviously I'm talking more personal there, but a vehicle, right? Anything that you're going to have in a fixed payment over a extended period of time with that same monthly payment. And so when I was saying that, there's some arms to this one, there's some SBA products, which we'll talk about. There's a real estate term loan, which is going to be, potentially a 25 on a commercial property or 20-year amortization, a car or vehicle, it's maybe 5 to 7. So just different types of terms, but conceptually still the same thing. Fixed payment over a certain amount of time. Okay. And to be honest, those are it. Those are the three. Whether you're a startup business or a $10 million company, it's business credit cards, it's lines of credit, or it's term loans, right? And it's not unrealistic for a company to have all three, because you're going to use your credit card for daily activity. You're going to have your line of credit for emergencies and a backup, and you're going to have that building that you're running your business out of on a term loan. Okay. It's just understanding the right thing to ask for. Because if you walked into me and said, hey, I'm going to buy this big piece of equipment, I need to get a line of credit, I'm going to say, nope, because you need a term loan, because line of credit's a variable rate that could go up or down on you. You need to have this in a fixed payment over a certain amount of time till it's paid off. Okay. All right. So next slide, there are some additional sources of capital that don't come from the actual bank. Okay. So if anyone's heard of a CDFI, that's a community development financial institutions. Okay. They're credit unions, they're loan funds and venture capital funds that are certified by the U.S. Department of Treasury to invest federal dollars along private sector capital to support underserved communities. So there have been times where I have used a CDFI to help one of my clients get a loan because maybe they had some questionable credit thing that happened to them in the past, or maybe it was investment property that maybe we couldn't do anything for. They were a newer business. CDFIs have some different programs that they can use. If you actually Google CDFIs in Ohio, there is a chart that pops up online that'll show you all of the different ones, what they actually specialize in, and which counties they serve as well. So that's always could be a nice help. Venture capital funds, are putting a greater emphasis on funding minority entrepreneurs, may provide some new opportunities, and then small business grants. If I was honest, I would say that pre-COVID, there was so many grant dollars flying around. I don't see them as often. However, I always say LinkedIn is a great place to just make sure you're connected with a lot of different organizations, because you never know when a board might meet and decide, hey, we've got some extra funds, like let's run this, grant program where we have a certain criteria, people have to apply, and then they, make their selection. So, they're kind of hit or miss. There's not some magic list out there, but you just kind of have to keep your ears and eyes open on that one. Okay. All right. So the final section is really more around the SBA loan programs. I'm not going to get deep into the weeds on this, because a lot of these can be, kind of higher end down the road for more, I would say 5+ year businesses, not always, but some of the bigger ones. But we can start with the SBA Express. But first, we'll talk a little bit about who's eligible. So the eligibility requirements include, but are not limited to, businesses with less than 15 million in tangible net worth. So a lot of people can qualify for an SBA loan. Businesses that have generated less than 5 million average net income over the past 2 decades. You can go one more slide, and I think actually one more after that. One more, you can go. Perfect. Okay, so the first one is the SBA Express. All right, so this one is typically, this one a lot of people can qualify for right now, regardless if typically it's 3 years in business or less. We would use the SBA Express on all of our deals here at Chase for the most part. The loan amount goes up to 350, but I think they actually just changed it to 500. I just was on a call yesterday, so our material is outdated now because their fiscal year ended at the end of September and they tweaked that. So I believe it goes up to 500 now. It could be a term loan or a line of credit. So really think of it this way. If you were to come to me and I were to do you were looking for a line of credit, let's just say, and there was maybe a collateral shortfall because you're, I don't know, an IT person and you don't have a ton of money in equipment. There's not really a lot in inventory. Obviously, you're more intellectual property. We could potentially use SBA to come in and help support the loan, which gives us our collateral support. So it makes us feel more comfortable because in case something happens and you default, they're going to turn around and pay us 50% of the loan. And they're also going to support you as a newer business that doesn't have the collateral to be able to get it in place. Okay. And there's no fees on SBA. I think it's under $1 million now. There's no fees on any of their loans as of right now. Okay. All right. The next slide is the SBA 7A. So when I was a lender, I didn't do this one too much. I was a big proponent of the next one that we're going to talk about. But the 7A is really a good loan for a lot of these community advantage programs that we read about. There's times where you can roll in debt. So let's just say you had some business credit card debt, you were looking to refinance a property and potentially get a line of credit. Those can kind of all work in. They have long terms of 25 years. So there's really some nice flexibility with the 7A program. Okay. The last one is the 504. So the 504 was one of my favorites because it offered a really low rate on the SBA portion. So let me tell you how it works. So let's just say you came to me and said, hey, I want to purchase this piece of a real commercial real estate for my business. You're going to occupy it because it can't be investment because SBA doesn't support investment. It's got to be that your business actually operates out of the space at least 50%. So let's say the building, and I'm just going to use this large number because it just makes sense for the math. If the building's $1 million, okay, the bank's going to give you 500,000, SBA is going to give you 400,000, and you're going to put in 100,000. So 10% down from the borrower, 50% from the bank, 40% from SBA. Now we'll do the whole loan together when we close. So we'll do the whole 90%, right? Then what happens is SBA comes in and they take out that 40% piece of it and they fix it the life of the loan for 25 years. The bank portion will only fix it for like 10 years, but they'll do a 25-year amortization. So your payment will be less, but in 10 years, you're going to have to redo that. So a lot of times people will pay more towards that bank loan, get it gone. And then this way they have that nice 40% piece locked in for 25 years at a pretty affordable rate. Okay. So, and a lot of times people use it because it's only 10% down. I mean, most conventional banks are going to look to say 20 to 30% down on any type of property, depending even how high risk your industry is. So it's a nice alternative. Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Okay. So begin building your empire. So I hope that this presentation has helped you take one more step toward building your own business empire. Remember that all the content that we covered today is in your book. Plenty of little exercises and information that you can kind of review. Keep it handy. Maybe it's not something that's completely relevant right now, but maybe it will be in 6 months from now. So make sure you just kind of keep it handy and refresh it as need be. Okay. And I want to ask one more question. Next slide is how confident do you feel about your knowledge of business credit options? So my hope is that if you were a 1, you were a 2, if you were a 2, you're a 3, that you've taken something away from this presentation today that will at least help you, whether it's to start using accounting software, if it's to understand the documentation you need to apply, if it's some different tactics and strategies you need to think about when it comes to getting receivables or payables, some of the different credit options that are potentially available to you. Hopefully you took some of that away. So if you go to the next slide, I believe we'll open up for Q&A, and then one more slide over to, there's actually a brief survey too. If you're on a computer and you can scan the QR code, I do ask, you have to select Akron just because that's where my home office is out of. My name will pop up. I asked literally 3 brief questions, just that did you take anything away from this? Couple of questions there. And the last one is most important to me, which is what other content do you want to know about? And we have our marketing team put some of this stuff together, but we just need to know what people are trying to figure out. Okay. All right. So we'll open it up for Q&A. I don't know if there's anything in the chat that was happening while we were talking.
No, there's nothing in the chat right now, but if anybody has a question, please put it in the chat. That would be great. Doesn't look like it's such a great.
I covered it that well.
Yes. And I think it's very clear. And again, I think the notebook is, or the workbook is a wonderful tool. And again, if you're working with a mentor, that's a great thing to show your mentor and make sure that you use it as a guide in developing your business plan, particularly your financial plan. So if there are no questions, and there don't seem to be, I will say, Laura, we also send out a survey shortly after the presentation that kind of asks the same question. So if we get any information that's valuable, we will certainly send it on to you.
Wonderful.
Okay, can we be provided with a copy of the video? Yes, I had put in the chat that you will get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording, probably tomorrow or the next day. So yes, everybody will get it. So if there are no further questions, thank you very much for taking the time to join us. And Laura, thank you.
Of course.
Wonderful presentation.